Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Business Spotlight. Today we have the pleasure and privilege of introducing and welcoming to the show a gentleman called Rupert Longdon. Now, Rupert, you probably gather by the image behind Rupert, or you may have taken a cue from it, is the founder and CEO of a fantastic business, 25 years or more, a little more maybe now, in existence, called Oxford Ski Company. And it is with absolute pleasure, Rupert, that we welcome you to the show. So thanks for joining in today. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself and what brought you from where you were to where you are. We'd love to know.
Pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me, Alice. Yes, I'm involved in skiing. I guess the question I'm always asked is, did you grow up on skis? What is it took you to this business? And my background was not skiing at all, but it was actually, and we skied a few times. My father wasn't interested, so eventually my mother wrestled us away a couple of times in our teens, and we all loved it. But it was the love of the mountains that, as you see the picture behind me, love of being in the mountains that really took me to where we are today with the Oxford Ski Company. And I think combine that with realizing I enjoyed looking after people, the sort of service hospitality side of things.
Okay.
So yeah, mountains are important, and with or without snow.
With or without snow. So I've got to ask the question, do you find yourself in the mountains when there is no snow?
Yes, I love being in the Alps where we do our skiing in the summer. Very underutilized, I would say, and recommend everyone goes there. But also historically, always and still do very much holiday up in the northwest coast of Scotland, and that's probably where it stemmed from, because I live in the Cotswolds, which aren't mountains, beautiful part of the world. But yeah, I think the mountains love came from being up in the hills of Scotland.
That's fascinating. A little before the show, we had just a few minutes to orientate a little bit, and we were talking about different ski resorts we've been to, both of us, over the years. I just was wondering what your if there were one destination that you could only go to go ski this year, where would it be?
It would be Val d'Isère in France.
Okay, and for all of us that would love to go to Val d'Isère but probably won't get there this year, why would it pull you in?
I mean, it's a really tough question you asked, because there's so many wonderful places that I don't generally have an absolute favorite. Okay. But I lived out there the 2 winters prior to the pandemic with my family, my young children, and put them through what they would describe as the hell of going to the local French school. And so it's the first place I worked. I worked as a plongeur, which, for those that don't know, is basically washing up in a restaurant in the mountains. So I think there's various connections with that resort that make me like go back. It's closer to a second home than just a ski resort. It doesn't mean it's the best or anything. It's just what I have my definitely an attachment to it more than just going skiing.
I can see there's a heartfelt connection with Val d'Isère. Yeah, more than just some skiing. So, interesting, right? Because for the benefit of the audience, the spotlight audience, we're talking about small and medium-sized business owners that are, in the main, going to be jumping. And by the way, if you haven't been on the Oxford Ski Company's website, you must go. We're going to talk a little more about marketing in a while with Rupert, but it's an absolute thing of beauty. The genesis point that everybody must have in their business journey is a passion, a vision, a dream, if you will. So your genesis point was what, and how did you visualize it back in the day? What did you see ultimately for your business, Rupert?
I think the business has changed over time, but actually, ultimately, look back on it. We didn't invent the wheel. Skiing holidays already existed, but back 25 years ago, they were quite a lot more rustic, I'm going to say, than they are now. And the sort of vision or genesis point I had was that I felt that offering out there, whether it was staying in a hotel or a chalet, which was the main focus, could be an awful lot better.
Okay.
And if you could spend a bit more money on it, could you make it better? And with the aim to basically offer the best in skiing holidays in the Alps. Now we go beyond that. So that was always the aim. It was like, how could we be the best in skiing? What is it that we can offer our clients that was the best? And that hasn't really changed. The model of the business has changed, and it wasn't not just me seeing a little cottage in the Cotswolds on a computer. You know, there's more of us now. But I think that's a market leader in skiing. I'm going to say now globally is still very strong in the culture of the business.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I really feel that, and it's often in interviews like this that we find ourselves referring back to some of the staple books that we would recommend any business owner to read, and one of them, of course, would be, and I'm hearing the echo there, would be Branson's story about, you know, his why when entering a marketplace is because he feels that the marketplace doesn't deliver the experience that it should. The customer deserves something better, and there's a fantastic parallel there, isn't there, with what you're saying. So do you have a preferred method of visualization, Rupert? Do you and your by the way, again, on your website, great to see the team all beautifully photographed, including the dogs, and it was really cool. So do you guys get together and visualize in a certain way? Do you have any tools? How do you recommend a small business owner that aspires to achieve what you've achieved starts off with visualization?
Yeah, I think all the way through we are looking at sort of visualizing it. You know, even from the interview process, we're talking about what our vision is for the company, what we're trying to do at that time. I mean, things have changed. Sure. Obviously, even with COVID. Every year we have a company vision day, which sort of kicks off on our new financial year. Now, it's not that we're asking everyone within the company to give their vision for the business, because that would be unrealistic. But it's probably a combination of reaffirming what our strategy and vision is for that coming year, but also giving opportunity in that day for other people to pitch in kind of what they see as some visions for the business. So it is something we do revisit certainly annually, if not more. But even if it's just actually, are we actually getting to where we're going? This is our, but actually, how are we going about it? And that's another sort of group sort of workshop sometimes, I suppose you call it.
That's great. So I mean, we were moving towards planning in a few minutes' time, but let's take it now. So again, could you share with us, for the benefit of the people watching, you know, what kind of cycles, what kind of timeframes do you plan in? I think what you're saying there is that the next 12 months is intense, it's detailed, it's focused. What's our vision for the next year, and how are we going to navigate? But how far into the future are you looking beyond that?
We have a 3-year business plan. Okay. But I think that the first 12 months of that, or 12 to 18 months of that, is very actively looked at quite regularly throughout the year. And then we probably have some projects which are looking beyond the next 12 months. So there might be plans or ideas we have, but we know they're not going to come into fruition, or not a priority to come into fruition, for example, in that period. But they're still being worked on in that, say, first 12 months, knowing it's something we want to complete by the end of 3 years.
I see.
But I'm also conscious that, you know, you can't look 3 years ahead. I think particularly recent times have shown that anything can happen. So it's getting the right balance between how much time we can give beyond the budgeting and absolute planning for that first 12 months.
No, I completely agree. And I think certainly when we're talking to business people about this critical subject, number one, start with the vision. Number two, work back from that. So if we've got 5-year vision, then you have 4, 3, 2, and 1 being where the detail is, because in years 2, 3, 4, and 5, as you rightly say, it's almost impossible, unless you happen to have a crystal ball, and maybe you do, but I don't know. It's going to be very difficult to be specific, right?
Correct, absolutely correct. But I think it's, you know, and I'm saying this in the latter years, decade of our business, or even more recent than that. You know, when I started, I certainly wasn't thinking that far ahead. I might have had the vision of what I want the company to be, but I couldn't work out. You know, I didn't do a business plan for the first 3 years because it just wasn't really needed, I suppose, and I wasn't mature enough to understand what I put into it. So it's that ability to look further ahead in a lovely way has grown as the company has grown. And as you said on the website, we're nearly about 30 people. And so there's more moving parts to help create a longer vision.
Isn't that fascinating? Because of course I mean, the statistics, I did catch my eye actually when I was doing the research ahead of the show, that 25 years puts you in 0.4% of businesses reach 20 years. So, I mean, you've got to think about the statistics there. That the cards are somewhat stacked against you. So outstanding. Bring it on. Let's have more people doing what you're doing.
I had no idea about that statistic, and that's really interesting. Not sure how, let's say, how good that statistic is, but it's interesting to know it though.
So if we think about it, I mean, just to add some more meat to that bone, we've got an attrition rate of something like 80% of startups fail to make it to the end of year one, and then 80% fail to get to 5, and the numbers come all the way down from there. So it's what's hugely relevant though, Mark. Sorry, why I called you Mark there. I was thinking about Mark Gibbons, your managing director.
Oh yeah, that's
coming up in a moment.
yeah.
So we'll come to Mark in a minute, Rupert. Forgive me. I was just going to say that when you're able to evolve the business by bringing talent and other people to the table, actually the process gets, dare I say, I don't want to say easier, but more sophisticated. Whereas in the early days, it's very much about yourself and a spreadsheet, right? So when did Mark join the business, whom I believe is the managing director today? When did Mark come along?
I first met Mark in the first few years of the business, all been a completely different guys. And then over the years, he was helping and doing various bits. And I can't really officially became sort of, I want to say, is it 15 plus years ago when he officially came on board sort of full time and sort of, and then it wasn't officially called MD then, but definitely is now. But it certainly wasn't a minute too soon. It was great, and it did, as you say, have the ability to start being able to grow and expand and get closer to the business we are today, and being able to, therefore, as it's grown, I think that I remember as a client actually probably helped almost me really realize I've got to do something about this. As we then were sort of 10 or 12 of us in the office, and he said to me something like, what's your vision for this year of the company? And I had a sort of reasonably good answer. And he said, I said, well, your company. I mean, he had made a lot of money and been very successful. He said, it's to empower people more within the business. I want to really empower them. Everything we're doing is to work out how I can make Mark, Ellis, or whoever it might be, have the power to be better at their job, because they're all perfectly capable people. And I think they're often squashed by other people not allowing them to do their job. And that's, I still think, a really conscious thought that happens quite regularly within the company. And what is it we can empower everyone, top to bottom, to actually use the brain they've got and be better at their job?
How did you find that evolution in people impacting yourself as the CEO? What were you able to do more of as they evolved?
Probably get a bit more involved with the future strategy and the business development, and look at other ideas than be sucked into the nitty gritty of how our CRM works from an IT perspective, which A, I'm not very good at, and B, was just taking up time, which was taking me away from where my strength was. So it enabled, I think, we all have different strengths, and Mark's strengths are, as an MD, are fantastic, and also different to my strengths, I suppose, as CEO, but it's more the BD side of things. It enabled myself to focus more on that, and the front of house type stuff, than the nitty gritty of the operating of the business.
I think it's, again, super insightful, because again, when people are in the early phases or the early years, maybe even people that have been in business as long as you but are not as evolved as you are, will still be struggling with trying to do what you described, Rupert, but also being too deep in the day-to-day, and therein lies a fundamental problem. So we would describe that particular phase as level 2. Level 3 is where the business is able to function without you, the founder, CEO, from a day-to-day perspective. So can you kind of can you remember when that became relevant? Is there a marked moment in time where you thought to yourself, hang on a second here, I actually don't need to be there today or tomorrow. If I go in, I do what I do, but I don't need to be there.
I'm not sure it is entirely absolutely at that, because I want to be there. Do I need to be here is different. You know, this time of year, I was out last. Well, I suppose a good example has been the last couple of weeks. You know, holidays, family, children, our busiest time of year. All the plates are spinning in the office. Clients are traveling, lots going on. And I remember a couple of days I was out of the office, taking a holiday, because actually I knew that people were doing the doing, and I could do that because I could honestly rely on them to do it. Now that has only really come into fruition in the last, I'm going to say, you know, I know 5 years, but every year that bit gets better. And I think that empowerment of those people has definitely enabled me to just leave them to it. I don't want to render myself not part of the business, but it is great when I, you know, go into a meeting and get things reported. It's just been done, which I didn't know had sort of started or were being even discussed, and then were completed.
It's interesting because in our discussions prior to the session, you've alluded to the fact that you're welcome to the 3%, by the way, because only 3% make it to level 3 typically. So 97% are between levels 1 and 2. So the irony is that the 3% control 98% of the wealth. We're going to talk about wealth again in a few minutes' time. So congratulations. Now, one of the critical factors of getting to 3% is that you have non-executive directorship, you have mentorship, you have coaching, you have third-party accountability and perspective in a business, right? And we talked about that a few weeks ago, and I think that's fantastic that you're doing that. So it's fascinating when I'm speaking to my CEOs, whether they're clients or whether they're, you know, businesses I'm invested in or non-executive director, whatever. The point is, I often find people saying to me, "Yeah, but I don't really want to make myself redundant. I really love my business. I want to be." I'm like, yeah, okay, we're kind of missing the point there, because actually, it's the freedom of choice that matters, isn't it? It's the ability to choose when you get involved and what you get involved in, how deep. So here's a question for you. Wealth. What's the definition of wealth? In my opinion, it's the freedom of choice over time multiplied by money. So that means we're time wealthy and we're financially wealthy. Now, and you then have the ability to choose what you do, and so on and so forth. So in your own mind, where are you on a scale of 1 to 5? You know, 5 would be absolutely on where I want to be, or is there still more work to be done?
There's definitely still more work to be done. That's a good question. I haven't really thought of it in that way. Yeah, look, beyond the halfway point, but somewhere sort of sitting, let's go 3/4 perhaps, would be my immediate answer to this. But yeah, so it's still aiming, but I suppose aiming towards that sort of end point of, you know, how far I got to go to. Yeah, I think probably about that really.
Yeah, I was just doing the mental maths and thinking, okay, so if 25 years is 3/4, then to get the last 25%, you ought to be able to do that real quick now.
I hope so. I'm getting older, obviously, with 25 years behind.
So tell me a little bit about exit then. What does exit mean? But by the way, I think we've established already in our preamble, and it's just for everybody that's listening, make it very clear. There is no right nor wrong in terms of exit strategy. For some people, exit strategy means sell it and be done with it and get to the beach or the mountains. For other people, it's pass it on to the children or to have the team run it in my stead. What does it look like for you, Rupert, ultimately?
I think, having now had this business for 25 years, and I've got this more thought more recently, that's a big chunk of my life. It's half my life. I'm over 50 now. So, but it's not just that. It's the fact that I feel I've got more to give than just do one business.
Okay.
Or one career, if that's what it was. Let's say I was working for someone else, which was the opportunity for me. So I think
fascinating.
I would like to have the opportunity. You're talking about time here and what as well, but the opportunity to do something else. And the way to do that realistically is probably to be alleviating myself of the Oxford Ski Company's entirety or partly. I don't quite know, but therefore, based on that, and a lot of work I've been doing with more recently is making it as professional and commercially so commercially successful and as professional as possible. So if it comes to that point, we're ready.
Yeah.
So I sort of, with the view that building up the business to make it attractive, ready for a sale, I suppose. Which, if it doesn't absolutely happen, tomorrow, next year, 5 years, doesn't absolutely matter. But it means it's really in a fit for purpose place.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating subject, that actually, because we often find ourselves talking about this on the spotlight, and what does optimizing a business ready for, again, let's remember freedom of choice. So they all routes start at that point in terms of exit. Why? Because you can't exit and pass it to the children or the team if it's not optimized and ready. You can't sell it if it's not optimized and ready, or at least you can't sell it for maximum value. Now, that for me is a really interesting one around systemization and the building out of the processes being mapped. So is that something that you guys as a management team are actually focusing on?
Yes, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Right, yeah, fascinating. So let's talk about marketing, please, Rupert, because you I don't want to be too what's the word, generic here when I say this, but I want to say that most small and medium-sized businesses should be marketing led. They should be marketing businesses that happen to be world-class ski experience holiday providers. And when I look at your marketing, it really does speak of quality and targeting and deep thinking. So how do you operate your marketing machine? Is it driven by an internal team? Is it driven by an external team? I've been fascinated.
It's a bit of both, but I would say we didn't in the early days spend enough time basically on the marketing department, the budget the marketing department needed, and how important marketing was. We are, as you correctly point out, ultimately a sales and marketing machine is what we are. We sell, we market and sell skiing holidays, and that is what we do. So where we are now, we have a strong in-house team. In fact, a few years ago, we were sort of outsourcing a bit and contracting a bit here, and just realised it just wasn't efficient enough and needed to bring it in-house and put more money into it. And ironically, actually, just as we had planned to get a new head of marketing and put a better, I suppose, salary towards it than we had before, someone that had more experience, more professional, more qualified perhaps, then COVID hit, and it was like, oh. And it was a tricky decision because on one hand, we had to sadly make people redundant. There was simply no choice. If you can't travel, you can't sell holidays, you can't obviously bring any money in. Yeah. But on the other hand, we had this plan to improve our marketing. And so, yes, we made you redundant, but we still went ahead with that hire of our head of marketing. And Felix, who with us now, was that person. And it was the best choice ever. Because it showed, I think it highlighted even more how important this department is. And so isn't it that there is an expression that, in a recession, you actually double your marketing, so you're more ready when things come out. And I suppose that was like a similar vision. So we have sort of 2 people here, 2.5 people here. There are elements which are outsourced, the more IT website stuff. It's not worth us having an in-house person doing that. But it is such a crucial function of our business that I would say we spent too long not paying enough attention. And had we paid more attention to it earlier, over our 25-year span, we would be further advanced as a business.
I think that is hugely relevant comment. I mean, the whole thing that you shared there is massively relevant to people listening or watching. But I would suggest that there are a lot of people that will understand that actually, from what you've said, they are way behind the marketing investment curve. we certainly find, Rupert, I'm not sure what you find in your broader business contact list, but we certainly find that people are going about the day-to-day business operation and then marketing. How they get to marketing instead of it being the primary part or aspect of their business, which is what it should be, really.
That is, I completely agree with that. Yeah, definitely, and guilty of that too, which is exciting to now understand and reverse that, but continue to think how we are making it even stronger.
And which of the two massive aspects of marketing are you guys focused on? Is it client acquisition, or is it client lifetime value, retention of? Is there a distinction between the two?
It's a bit of all of it, really. We have a whole client journey mapped out. And there are different parts of it, which are down from the client acquisition part to the how do we get the client who's just come back from skiing at the weekend to repeat book, and how we communicate and engage with those people all the way through that cycle is as important. There's a high cost to acquisition in our world, so second booking halves that cost.
Absolutely,
roughly. It doesn't quite work that way. So. We are about an experience. We're very people-led. We are conversation. It's about our team here speaking to our clients and selling them holidays. So that definitely takes up a bit of time, but that is important to get that repeat business. So we look at both ends of it really, really importantly.
That's massively important, and referral and people effectively selling for you. There are so many small businesses out there that don't think of this as a critical aspect of their marketing mix. How do you guys approach that?
Referral bit is really frustrating. We send out in brief a sort of survey, which article, as well as a personal conversation about following up, and then one of the questions has often been, would you refer people to us? Yes, but do they? No. And it's interesting. Our clients come from all around the world, so we do have a strong core of UK clients who I think are some of the worst at referring. But we have American clients, Brazilian clients who are brilliant. They're kind of like, I had a WhatsApp from a Brazilian client this morning saying, Rupert, I'm just out skiing and I just bumped into someone at lunch. I've just given your details and refer them to you. British don't do that. I mean, terrible. So it is something that we are constantly trying to get better at, or work out how we can improve, because it is that campfire style of referral is the best and easiest way to get a repeat.
Absolutely. Yeah, 1,000,000%. So what I mean, it's interesting actually, because I often find when people are struggling with this, they'll say to me, so what is the solution? And often, it appears to be a psychology around, and forgive me for positioning it this way, but the more premium a product or a service, the more acute often the situation becomes, because the client doesn't feel that they should refer on some level. As I say, it's a psychology, because they might have something in their head that says, well, these guys are super professional, they're the best at what they do, clearly they're very busy, do I need to refer them? You see what I'm trying to say? It's a really interesting thought.
I think there's that, and I think there are people who slightly go, well, look, I don't want to share. I found this good company, or this good property, or this good thing. I want to keep it to myself. It's like, sort of, I don't know. It is a bit of that going on. I'd love to know. I'd love to understand it more, because I think if we could unlock the key to better referrals. As the Americans are like, you must be my friend. They're so like,
it's gregarious, outgoing, right?
The fact that they know it first and knew it best, they want to share that.
We're more reserved. We're a little more reserved.
We're just a bit more guarded on it.
I mean, stupid question here. Bear with me a second. Are you actually asking them to refer you? Are you saying, look, please tell your friends and family?
Yes, we do. In various different ways. And some ways are working better than others. Someone's booked a holiday, and often they're going somewhere because there are some friends there. And it might be they're now going skiing somewhere in Val d'Isère, France. They're going to say, we're going here, you guys should come along, you should speak to our ski company. So it's trying to find out when is the right time to actually get them to do it, because they will do it. It's just getting the right moment sometimes.
Again, it's two schools of thought on this. The first school of thought is, well, if you don't ask them to, they probably won't, because they will have some kind of psychological barrier. The other side of the coin, and this actually for me is where I sit, it's quite fascinating. Businesses that are referral led don't ask. They engender a culture of automatic referral, and it's unraveling that. It's finding out that key, the mix that sits in there, that I find is the most powerful methodology. But anyway, let's if you don't mind, we'll just have one more question for this afternoon's session.
Of course.
It's been really interesting for everybody listening to talk about marketing there. I mean, planning, actually planning marketing. Is there a preferred method for your marketing team? Do they utilize a certain piece of software, or are they leaning into spreadsheet? How does it work? How do you guys go about marketing planning?
Well, we do so many different forms of marketing. I think it's planned in different ways, but a crucial bit is looking to see what's been successful historically in the last, 12 months to actually try and determine. And that is sometimes using and looking at our CRM and our database, and then we have worked with Salesforce and various systems plugged into that to try and help us engage with our clients better. So there's some quite detailed, granular stuff and what information we need to be better at. The successful marketing and segmenting our database, down to kind of, how do we get, more clients come out of the US, and how are we going to do that? And what's the, so it's a lot of different bits, I suppose, but ultimately trying to establish which bits, what's been our, ROI and success in the different areas we've done it. But I don't think anyone has the answer to that, because people hear about you now in so many different ways that we need to still get the brand presence out there, but they won't tell you necessarily, oh, I put your label. How do they find us? What is it they read? So I'd like to think it's done, that planning is done in a scientific, considered way, but there's always a little bit of finger in the air. It's like, I feel this is what we should be doing this year.
Well, I mean, look, Henry Ford back in his day, who arguably invented modern consumer, B2C marketing, he did say, didn't he? I'm sure it was credited to him, that marketing's essential. The problem is that only 50% of it works. The real challenge, though, is that we don't know which 50%, right? So, and it was as relevant back then as it is now. Just out of interest, which CRM system are you using?
Salesforce.
Salesforce. Okay. I mean, there's a myriad of options out there, right? But if you said to me, which one do you see the most? Which one do you see as being the most powerful, whether it's in America or over here or whatever? HubSpot, I see a lot of good things. Yeah. But anyway, that's another point for another time. So this afternoon, Rupert, it's been really fantastic to talk to you and understand a little more about the Oxford Ski Company, and to have the opportunity to share what you've achieved and what you're doing with our listeners and with the people watching. It would be fantastic at some point maybe to re-invite you in the future and go a little deeper into one or two aspects, if that's okay. But I just would like to say on behalf of everybody at Spotlight, thank you so much for engaging and for joining in.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed it, and I'd be very happy to come back.
Thank you very much. See you soon.